quick, combo-style combat paired with a fighting knowledge facilitated by clash after clash with the same enemy. Duels against a roster of antagonists you recognize from prior playthroughs, in which you duel in a ladder-based system, choosing your skills before playing that define the experience. Oh, wait. We're not talking about a fighting game. We're talking about...
Night and darkness guide you.
Supergiant Games is the passion project based out of California, founded by Gavin Simon and Amir Rao. After they both left EA, the gamble shortly paid off, with modern cult classics such as Transistor and Bastion. A Venn diagram of these titles will tell you Supergiant isn't afraid of mixing the formula, but what changed to make their most recent title feel more like a Street Fighter / Diablo love child than a classic ARPG? Well, The Binding of Isaac happened. Released in 2011 alongside such games as Skyrim and Dark Souls, The Binding of Isaac is what's known as a roguelike. Live, die, repeat, but fun. It wasn't the first game with traits such as permadeath or twin-stick shooting, but it's now a cornerstone in what the gaming public now knows as a roguelike. You play, you die, you choose a new character, and discover new things you've unlocked in your previous playthrough. Or if you play like I do, you die to a black pony for the 50th time and you turn on YouTube instead. Non-coincidentally, Hades takes these very same things and expands on them almost 9 years later, but instead of thoughtful inventory management, Hades adopted a run and gun, in-your-face style of play that's as engaging as it is addictive. Cast, double jump, jab into ground slam, and just like that, you're on to the next room to raise more hells of Hades. Boss fights aren't quite as easy, but even as terrible as I am at most games, I've run through Hades several times without being touched by its wide berth of colorful, talkative, checkpoint-style bosses. I felt the muscle memory take over, the satisfaction of outplaying a room of enemies, and that, exactly, is the heart of my hypothesis. Similar to Devil May Cry, Hades is a fighting game in disguise. Before you can fully understand any singularity of media, you have to do some prospecting at its inception. Let's take a look at the creation of Hades and its influences. Amongst the most obvious is the grandstanding influence of Greek mythology. Hundreds of lines of dialogue finely crafted to bring a humorous interpretation of each mythical character represented in game. Hades fully realizes all of the characters it pays homage to, and painstakingly so was it crafted, and in such aversion to all else misaligned with Supergiant's format that it starts to float by itself, genreless, separate. But because we are indeed people, and people enjoy patterns, an analysis of Hades may surprise you. Several things are needed to appease others in deciding what defines something as what it is. Some may always disagree, but they wouldn't be watching this video. Others enjoy learning and thinking outside the box, but need certain traits to compare before they feel convinced. Fair enough, let's go ahead and compare genres then, shall we? Hades shares traits with several macro genres, or genres that can encompass others without needing to redefine the game. It's an RPG, a roguelite or roguelike style game that allows you to carry over progress from other runs in forms of weapons, abilities, etc. And it's also an isometric game, a game that's seen from the 3/4 down view. It's also several micro-genres, or the quote-unquote game-changing traits. Think of these traits as food. A macro-genre is a sandwich, but the micro-genre is the stuff in the middle that influences whether it's a fish sandwich or a cheeseburger. So, an RPG is a game sandwich, which is a very general idea, but a hack and slash micro-genre is the ham and cheese, which in turn makes it not a first-person shooter, or let's say a BLT. Hades is an RPG, roguelite, isometric game, but that doesn't stop it from being a hack and slash, which it is. So, after a ponder on this phenomenon, it feels very fair to say Hades could be an RPG, roguelite, isometric, and fighting game. This feels like a large leap if you see fighting game as more of lettuce than you do buns, but obviously I do not. Before fighting game purists become enraged at the idea, I'm also not suggesting Hades should be played at EVO. It's very clearly not a competitive game in a player versus player aspect, but if you took Street Fighter, played ladder mode alone, and changed the camera angle, what are the differences? Combos? Sure, Hades doesn't have a listed system, but they do adopt a more intuitive combo system with its own quote-unquote fireball system, stuns that give either the player or enemies priority during duels, and combat that relies on positioning and enemy knowledge. I can only think of 2 games that had me mashing buttons in a semi-meaningful way to get an edge: Street Fighter and Hades. To continue the comparison, fighters choose quote-unquote builds before a round starts. They can be as influential to the game as the hands the controller is held in, but they will always change the experience until you either win or lose, in which case, you're free to make the choice all over again. One thing you can't change, though, is the order in which you find the several bosses of Hades. Like story mode ladder systems of many fighting games, they are pre-arranged to be taken on as the game developers saw fit, in an oddly narrative fashion, despite neither fighting games nor roguelites being heavy on story. However, it's often there in more subtle ways. If you haven't been swayed, that's alright. Not all views are the same when looking from the outside. I'd still like to sing the game's praises for a bit. I was inspired to explore this genre clasher discussion after many playthroughs, and the game really paints a wonderful artistic adventure where the hard work that went into it is very obvious. At times, it even felt like an action RPG, the same as Diablo, where decently sized hordes swarmed Zagreus only to be toppled by precise abilities and spear jabs. Its high art style sets a new precedent. It's a completely different world, very unlike the old Flash games and classic roguelikes with no graphics. Hades has set a new standard for polish in the realm of roguelikes, and I'm excited to see the influence it paints in the zeitgeist.